taking names and kicking butts. This is Headkicks and Haymakers.
Good morning, fight fans. I am that dude, Bodkins. Welcome to Head Kicks and Haymakers. We got a packed up lineup today for you. As always, I am joined by K with the Craig Koger, and the man behind the channel panels, producing this show, the one and only Mr. Smoking Amigo Kenneth Miller. Welcome, boys. It has been last night was an incredible round of fights. All 10 finishes. Hold on, I had this stat pulled up real quick. Off right to a great
first time since 2014. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Yep. Hold on. Whoa. Now so all 10 finishes. First time since 2014 that we just talked about. Listen to this. Tonight's the first night in 8 years that's had 100% finish rate. It's part of only 10 events in the UFC history with 100% finish rate. The other 9 cards: UFC 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, Ultimate 96, UFC 40, Tough 5 finale, and UFC Fight Night 55. And you know who all saw those great 10 finishes, folks? The 30 people sitting in the gosh dang apex. I mean, how do they go from a card like London, even the Dallas card last weekend, which was chanting Mexico and Brandon Moreno, and we see all these great places since the pandemic's been back. They're making millions. I mean, they said that gate last Saturday was one of the highest grossing gates they've ever had, especially the highest in Dallas they've ever had. And then you go to the lovely Apex, and then you get a card that probably deserved, 10 finishes, fighters that deserve to be in front of fans, fights that deserve to be in front of fans. And what do we get? We get 30 people at it may be plus in the Apex. I mean, you could go to your amateur MMA and find more people in a place watching fights more than people are fitting in the Apex. And these are professionals. That we need to start treating them like professionals, get them back out there. Boys, why does Dana and the UFC keep running this back out into the Apex? I mean, I get it. It was great for the pandemic. The pandemic is now pretty much over. 99% of the places are open. People are allowed to go back in stadiums. I mean, we see it in every football, baseball stadium, all packed. So, Craig, why do they keep running us out in the Apex? And fans, that card could have been an A+++ had fans been in there last night.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think the fight nights, some of these fight night cards are getting pretty good, and traveling cities on fight nights would only help grow the sport. And I mean, I don't know why Dana loves this damn Apex so much, but Dana's talking about, expanding the Apex and being able to have fans at the Apex and making the Apex bigger. I don't know if it's just because Dana owns the Apex. I don't know why he's shying away from getting back out of it. I mean, like you said, it worked great for the pandemic. It served its purpose. So, I mean, we're past that now. That card last night was good, man. And some of those fights, I mean, with all the finishes, having fans in the stadium would have just made it on another level. So I don't know why Dana's sleeping on this opportunity to just make the events bigger, help grow the sport. But he loves that Apex, man. He's talking about staying and making it to where he can have people there.
So
Kenny,
when you think about it, I mean, it's all about money, right? Now there's the side of, well, without fans you make less money, but there's also a side of Dana where he's got a lot of money in that Apex, and he put a lot into it. The pandemic, during the pandemic, no one was really sure what the future was going to look like, and there's got to be a little bit of Dana that thought, I might have just built the arena that I'm going to use for the next 10 years, and he's got a lot of money in it. On top of that, it's localized in Vegas, where basically most of those fighters are from. Now, not everybody's in Vegas, but Dana's in Vegas. A lot of the promoters are in Vegas. A lot of those big name fighters live in Vegas, and he doesn't have to pay to rent out MGM or the Mirage or anything like that. He can just kind of put it wherever he wants, and then the Apex is there. So I think that it does make sense for the Apex. Now the problem is we get a card like last night, and the only people that get to cheer are the people in the corners, and that's an issue. And I think even if you expand the Apex, Chandler and Ferguson goes to show you exactly why you need to have fans in the stands whenever knockouts are going to happen, whenever big finishes are going to be there. You know, some of the best videos we get are the videos of the booth of Joe and DC and them boys freaking out. You got it last night with Bisping and the crew. You know, you got a lot of with that many finishes. You're going to get a lot of good clips like that, and those guys can't be the only ones celebrating though. You know, the fans got to be cheering. The fans got to be rocking the place. You know, when you got guys coming up like Patty, like Sugar, you got these guys that are putting on big shows. I mean, last night we've seen a lot of guys put on some good shows. A lot of fighters put on some good shows. Not just guys, a lot of fighters put on some good shows. And yeah, you hope people tuned in. But at the same time, if fans are there, those clips get better. As you guys said, the sport grows when people start watching those fights on YouTube. If you watch a replay of a fight on YouTube and it's in the Apex and it's quiet, it's one thing when you hear the crowd or the corner saying, oh, yeah, right. Okay, here we go. It's different when the fans start chanting people's names and they're screaming and yelling and the camera pans out and the place is rocking. That's what grows the sport. That's when, as a fan, when you watch that, you know, it's like watching any other spectator sport. Once we got fans back, you know, that's what reminds you of being a little kid, watching the fans go crazy. That's how you grow that sport. You're not going to get that by the Apex. The Apex is good. Localized venue for them to do what they're doing, but get fans in every single card. We can't have cards like last night, Ultimate Fighter finales, and have 10 finishes, first time in 8 years, and then no one's seen it except the people watching TV. That can't happen.
The Apex is great for, you know, for the tough contests and for a lot of the stuff that the UFC does, but for the events, man, I just feel like they got to get out there. And not only just the fan reactions, but just being able to go to, I mean, you know, the pay-per-views are usually, you know, Vegas, New York, Dallas. I mean, you can send fight nights to, you know, the San Antonios, to bring them up here to St. Louis or, like, you know, Columbus, Ohio, and you can grow your sport that way by hitting different markets across the country.
Kenny, you mentioned the tough finale, and it was like 17 years ago that since like Tough 1 happened, and we saw that reaction to that crowd. It was funny, like it's like, oh, we're gonna flash back to Tough 1 17 years ago, and that crowd was going insane. And then it's like, all right, flash forward, and well, you could hear almost a pin drop when these two tough guys are, you know, when these tough finales going on. I mean, that should be an include right there. I mean, when you're at home and that crowd is going, and, you know, just like at the London card and everybody's chanting Patty, I mean, you almost get goosebumps when the people are cheering. I mean, it gives you an adrenaline rush sitting at home. I mean, for a viewing experience, when the crowd is lively and is going crazy, in any sport, it gives the viewer at home even better, better viewing. Like, so, you know, the Apex wasn't built for just the pandemic. It was built for the Contender Series. It was built for tough and those things. But we need to stop doing fight nights here. I mean, there's a 200 plus city. You know, I don't know how many big cities or whatever cities you want to send them to. Send them to some city. I mean, any city. You know, Craig said St. Louis. They were in Columbus in March. They've been, and that's the thing, is like they've been to these couple different cities here. So it makes it even tougher when they do go back to the Apex. Had they still been doing the Apex and that's all they ever did, I think we'd be okay, you know, somewhat okay with it. But the fact that we've seen them sell out, you know, arenas, and we've seen them go to, you know, fight nights in Columbus, you know, New York, next week's in San Diego. I mean, stop going there. Stop, please, Dana, please. I mean, that's the easiest fix in the world. I feel like it's time to start booking places.
Yeah, like you said, it's one thing if it's the only thing we've had for the last 2 years, but we've been back in front of fans. We've seen it. We've experienced it again. You can't give a starving man a full Thanksgiving dinner and then say, hey, that's it, boys. You know, and he never gets to eat again. Well, you gave us fans back, Dana. You got to, like, leave them with us. You know, like you said, for that viewing pleasure at home, the thing that makes it an exciting thing to watch at home, this is every sport, is the fans being there. That's what makes you feel like you're in the game. A guy hits a shot, the crowd goes wild, you feel like you're there. When a guy hits a shot and no one says anything, I mean, it's exciting, but it's hard to get into some of that stuff. Even as fight fans, like it's very exciting to see the finishes. But the in between, man, it's hard to fill 15 minutes sometimes and keep people engaged and keep them from turning the channel. And I mean, at the end of the day, some of us want to hear them guys talk, but not everybody wants to hear them guys talk. And it's easy when you can show the crowd and you got some celebrities there and you got some people going crazy, show the fans, guys are chugging beers. Every Thai fight, you see 10 dudes chug beers out of shoes in the crowd. You don't get that same feeling like the energy is there. It's not as an electric environment whenever the fans aren't there.
And I'm going to ask you guys, do you guys think it changes fights? I mean, we've heard fighters come out and say, hey, I can't handle the apex, the quietness. I need that roar of the crowd. Just some of these fights shift and change if that crowd is there. Vincent Luque, like, I mean, he would, we saw what he did to Michael Chiesa in a full stadium, but then I think his last 2 fights have been at the Apex and he's lost. Maybe he needs that adrenaline rush here. Craig, I mean, what's your thoughts here on does not having the crowd change the fights?
For sure, man. Like, I don't know how it couldn't change the fights, I mean, we've seen in boxing and in UFC and just fighting as a whole sport, man. I mean, that crowd gets behind you and that can almost give you a second life in some of these fights. Some of these guys dig a little deeper. That adrenaline gets going. Yeah, I mean, I think there's absolutely no way that fighting in the Apex versus fighting in a sold out stadium, I mean, it can't change the outcome of a fight,
At the end of the day, as much as fighting is a technical sport, I mean, obviously we know that. You can watch any single fight card and see that it's a very technical situation, but it's also a very ego-driven sport as well. And the one thing anybody with an ego knows, which is every single person alive, you need spectators. And if you go play one-on-one with your homie, everything changes. One person walks by. Just one person walks up the street. You're going to play a little bit harder while that person can see you. It just is what it is. Nobody wants to walk out of that cage and have to walk in front of 20,000 people that are all pointing at him saying, you suck. Or let's say you're in a fight like Matt Schnell was, or take your pick of these guys. We've seen a lot of big-time comebacks in the last month. You put those guys in front of fans, people start cheering. A lot of things happen. As the fighter that's being the aggressor, you hit a guy, the whole place blows up. It even clicks in your head. Oh, shit. And now you kick a little harder. If you're that guy that just got popped, the whole crowd blows up. You're like, oh, shit. And now you got to defend a little harder because as bad as that might have hurt you, you don't know how bad it really was until the whole crowd blows up. And you're like, oh, shit, everybody knows I just got fucked up. So I think that having the crowd there no matter what is going to enhance things. It's only going to make it better for not just us, but for the fighters involved. It's hard. It's a lot easier to get up in a spectator sport when you're performing in front of spectators. That's just the way it is.
All right, boys, let's go ahead and get into the fights. We had our complaints about not the fans, but I mean, if fans were, this was an incredible, sneaky good fight night card. We'll go ahead and with the main event. I mean, Jamal Hill getting a huge win here. He's now 11-1. His only loss is when Paul Craig dang near broke his arm, but huge knockout of he knocks out Thiago Santos in the 4th round. Both guys looked exhausted. Jamal Hill I had him winning, 2 of the 3 rounds. I thought Thiago in the 3rd round when he was taking him down and just grappling with him, and that's something Thiago doesn't do, but had to change his game plan because I mean Hill was piecing him up here. So Hill calls out Yuri, not Yuri. Well, he calls out Yuri, but he also calls out Jan Blachowicz afterwards. So Kenny, who do you like? I mean, what's your thoughts on Mr. Jamal Hill? Is he a legit player here in the light heavyweight, the 205 division? And play a little matchmaker for us.
He's definitely a legit contender. I mean, it's easy to say he's got a ways to go as well. But you go out and you knock out Thiago Santos, you're a legit contender, and there's nobody that can say you're not. I think that the Jan fight was probably a good one for him to call out. He's going to have to beat a guy like that if he is going to want to fight for the belt. He said he would take Yuri, and I think that anybody that's in that mix is going to take Yuri if they can get him. But I think Jamal Hill knows that that's not realistic either. I don't think he's ready for that, but he's definitely. I thought he was just a big hook, for a few fights. He was an exciting guy to watch. The Paul Craig fight, I think you go back a couple shows. We're all kind of big on Paul Craig there for a while, and so Paul Craig beating Jamal Hill. I didn't know if that said more about Paul Craig than it did Jamal Hill, but I think the way he's come back, he's exactly who he was, and he doesn't really care if you know exactly what he wants to do to you. He's going to try to hit you with that right jab until you circle into the left hook, and as soon as he can hit you with the left hook, he's going to try to put you to sleep. I think Santos, they said last night, I think was the first takedown since 2019 that he landed in a fight. That I think that's credit to Jamal Hill, and then those heavy hands, like you said, forcing him to change, not just change his game plan a little bit. I think he tried 19 takedown attempts, they said, or something at one point. Who in the world ever would have thought that? So kudos to Jamal Hill for getting that big win. Like you said, man, both guys were exhausted. I think if it went to the fifth round, they were just going to have to stand there and play patty cake or something, because I don't think either of them had what it took to go out and try to finish that fight. Jamal Hill, you kind of seen him when he even he got that knockdown, he almost didn't have enough to climb on and try to go for the finish. You kind of seen him like, oh man, like I got to go in and I got to do this. This is my job. And so it was good to see him win, though. It's good to see some new blood kind of at the top. No offense to Santos, man. Tough dude, but he's been there a long time. Like, let's get some new guys in the mix. I do think Jamal Hill and Jan is probably the best fight to make, especially if he's going to go back with Glover again. Hey, ain't Jan and Jamal Hill kind of a number one contender fight at that point? I think that kind of works out as a title eliminator. So, yeah, let's do Jamal and Jan.
Greg, what's your thoughts here on Hill and Santos from last night?
I agree that I kind of agree with Kenny said out of the gate there that Jamal Hill is he's in the contender conversation now. He's, he beat Johnny Walker, lost to Paul Craig, and now he beat Thiago Santos. So I think it's time for him to probably, get a top 5 guy. But I also agree that, he's got a little bit to go before he's fighting for the belt. Ankalaev is up there, just won a fight, so he's in that mix too, in that title eliminator conversation. So, but Jamal Hill definitely belongs. Like you said, the only time we saw him lose was to Paul Craig, and he didn't even tap out. He got his arm pulled out of socket, and the ref had to stop the fight because he kept on fighting through it. So, I mean, the kid is tough as nails, but he definitely was out of gas in last night's fight too. Luckily, just the older Thiago Santos was out of more gas, I had Jamal Hill up in the fight as well. And like you said, credit to Jamal Hill because you saw that Thiago Santos had to really change up just the way that we know him as a fighter with the 19 takedown attempts. And I think they said 6 out of 19. So Jamal Hill was still doing a very good job defending the takedown. So yeah, I mean, everything that I've seen out of the kid, I think he's up there in the top 5. He needs a top 5 fight. But it's, if Glover and Yuri are going to run it back, then you got Jan, Ankalaev, and Jamal Hill. Somebody's going to be the odd man out there. So we'll see what happens. But I do think that Jamal Hill's ready to get like a top 5 type fight.
Yeah, I think the fight, him and Jan Blachowicz is a little bit better because both guys got heavy hands and both like to bang. So I think that's probably a better fight for him, a better chance to win. I worry about him as far as like overall game. I mean, we did see he had good takedown defense last night, but that was against a guy who doesn't do a lot of takedowns. So, I mean, that'll be a common question once he gets up there with some, a guy even like Glover, a guy who can take down just about anybody in this game and choke you out in this division, has done it to numerous guys. So I worry about him when it comes to guys like that. But if a guy's willing to stand and bang with him, I mean, he can put those guys' lights out because we've seen it. I do worry about his conditioning a little bit too. I mean, that was his first 5-round fight. I mean, both guys looked exhausted. He looked like he was just like Kenny said, whew, oh my gosh. I think he was hoping for a little Herb Dean early stoppage almost and didn't get it. Was like, gosh, dang it, Herb, you're supposed to stop it here. And then went in and finally got the kill. I mean, let's talk about Thiago before we get into the co-main. Thiago, I mean, this is a guy who went split decision with, John Jones, but has never looked the same since those knee injuries. He's had one win since he's been back from those injuries. I mean, is it is it Thiago just never going to be the same since that Jones and those injuries? Or is it just time for him to take lesser talent and try to build him, less talented fights? I mean, it's tough to say lesser talent, but lower level fights. Maybe, I mean, Jamal Hill was 10, so maybe Thiago needs to fight somebody in the bottom, 15 or so to get himself back on a run and get some momentum, because he's only had one win since he's that Jones fight and those knee injuries. He just doesn't look the same. Kenny, what do you think here on what's next for Thiago?
Man, what's next is I think he needs to take a little time off probably and just kind of think about kind of what he wants that next step to be, really. I would never want to talk about like a retirement situation or anything with Thiago Santos, because I still think he's young enough. He's got some time left, but I mean, I think just career arc, you can tell. I mean, it's definitely on the back hill side of that hill. I think just kind of what he's shown us and kind of what we've seen. He's definitely a tough out. There was even times last night Jamal Hill didn't want to just stand and bang with him. He even had to get out and kind of circle around and regroup a little bit. So I don't want to take anything away from Santos like that, but I think that it's kind of evident now that as far as the top 5 goes, he just doesn't have that level in him anymore. And I don't know if that's him just getting a little bit older and the wear and tear kind of taking a little bit out of him, or is that the division just kind of caught up to where those guys all were 8 years ago, whenever him and John Jones, those guys were making their run. I don't really know what you credit more to that, but I think that Santos realistically should probably try to look at one more top 5 fight if he can get one. I think Dana would do that for him, try to make him a little bit more money. Then he can go be a top 10 gatekeeper for a fight or two and probably call it quits. Other than that, if he's trying to really stay in the mix, then he's going to have to accept that he's got to fight somebody a lot lower ranked. He just fought Jamal Hill. And, Hill, I think it was better than his ranking was. But at the same time, you're not exactly showing that you can beat top 10 guys anymore either. So I think that he starts ending up in that. I know Krylov and Ozdemir are going to fight. But maybe you do Santos and Craig and give one of them guys a chance to stick around that top 10 area. I know Craig's coming off that L, but the way that L went, I think that he can give him another chance to prove himself as well. I think that'd be a big fight for both guys. If you're only going to do 1 or 2 more, if you're Santos, and I think you can get a bigger name guy, and Dana will give you some money on the way out. But if you're really trying to prove that you're going to stay in the mix, I think you're going to have to fight somewhere in that 9 to 14 range and kind of prove that you're still a top 10 guy as well.
Yeah, Craig, I kind of like that. Paul Craig and Santos is number 10. What's your thoughts here on Thiago at the end here?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Since the John Jones fight, Santos, he's lost like 4 out of 5. But until last night, all of his losses are against guys that are sitting in the top 5 of the division right now. So we know that Santos isn't a top 5 guy, and I think that that's been proven. He just did lose to Jamal Hill, but this guy's a young up-and-coming kid. I think Thiago Santos is right in that area where he does need to fight somebody in that 10 to 15 range. You got to think Santos probably dropping down, into that range after this loss. And Paul Craig is a good fight. That's not a bad fight to set up, both the guys coming off a loss. I think Thiago Santos, I don't think it's time to hang it up. Like I said, the guys that he's been losing to, they're top-tier guys in the division. So I think I think Santos can still compete with kind of the bottom end of that division. So, but yeah, Paul Craig, that I didn't think about that fight, but that's an interesting fight, and that'd be an interesting fight for Thiago Santos to kind of prove where he's at in the division, actually. So I wouldn't mind seeing that one.
Yeah, talking about Thiago's last fights, Craig, you hit the nail on the head. His last 5. Here's his fight since the Jones fight. Lost to Glover Teixeira, lost to Rakic, did beat Johnny Walker. That's the only guy that's outside of that top 5. That was, they hoped to get him back on track. Then he lost to Ankalaev, and now he lost to Hill. So, didn't beat the test to Hill. But again, like Craig said, Hill's a young and up and comer guy that I think the UFC can get behind. He's a guy with, knockout power, man. I mean, he punches people's lights out. He's the only guy that likes the Apex. He's undefeated in the Apex from way back in the Contender Series. Every one of his wins have been in the Apex. So he's the only person that likes the Apex. His lone loss was in the pay-per-view crowd to Paul Craig. So
Have you heard him on the mic? That's why he likes the Apex. You wouldn't be able to hear him if the place is going crazy after he knocks somebody out. He just talks like this, and this is the only thing he says, and you can't hear shit. No one really knows what's going on. And then at the end, when his corner said, "Hey, you better shout somebody out," he said, "Oh, by the way, I got people." And then all of a sudden, you could hear him. But the whole time he was talking, he's just real quiet. Hey, I'll take you on. I'll take you, whoever we want me to fight. I don't care. You couldn't understand shit. If there's 20,000 people going crazy because he just put a dude out, you wouldn't be able to hear the motherfucker at all.
So let's get into the co-main here. Geoff Neal, I mean, nice knockout. I mean, he knocks out Vincent Luque. I mean, he kind of controlled that fight from knocks him out in the third here. Luque had a little bit better of the second round, but I mean, it just looked like Neal was just on pace here and was just jabbing him and piecing him up. It was a barrage at the end of the uppercut. I about said Undertaker's uppercuts, and finally puts Luque out. Geoff Neal is, I mean, it seems like he's like win one, lost one, win one, lost one. He's a guy that's got heavy hands. He calls out Gilbert Burns. Craig, what's your thoughts here on Geoff Neal and that fight last night?
Last night was probably for a full 3 rounds the best that we've probably ever seen Geoff Neal. We've seen kind of the guy that we saw last night in spurts, but that guy usually seems to kind of run out of gas and end up losing fights. And I kind of almost thought that that's where last night's fight was going. He looked really good in the first round, but like you said, then Luque came out and kind of started looking a lot better in the second round. And I thought, okay, so third round's up for grabs. Geoff Neal doesn't have it in the bag, and then kind of as soon as I was saying that, he put an end to the fight. So Geoff Neal and Gilbert Burns, I mean, if that's who he wants, let's see if he can prove himself. Personally, I think I would take Gilbert in that fight. I don't know if Jeff's there yet. But yeah, like I said last night, for a full 3 rounds, I feel like that's the best that we've seen Geoff Neal. So I feel like let's give him a step up in competition and see, how much he is growing as a fighter. I do think that he was kind of starting to run out of gas there towards the end, but he had already done enough damage on Luque that, Luque was out of gas too. He was spent. But yeah, Gilbert doesn't have a fight set up. A lot of the rest of the division does. I mean, you got, Wonder Boy's in there. I don't think he's got anything. I wouldn't mind seeing, Geoff Neal fight Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy's kind of a gatekeeper-ish type of guy to really see where Geoff Neal's at. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, if Gilbert wanted to fight with Geoff Neal, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think that'd be an all right fight.
Kenny, I see you giving some weird looks here. What's your thoughts on Geoff Neal?
Sorry, I was muted. I don't want anybody to hear me angry typing over here. No, I wasn't giving any weird looks. Geoff Neal already fought Wonder Boy is the only reason when Craig brought Wonder Boy up. That's the only reason why I threw out a little weird look. Definitely Craig's spot on, man. It's the best we've seen Geoff Neal look for 3 rounds. Geoff Neal's kind of had that career almost like Hermanson, where win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And I think what we've seen from Geoff Neal is he wins the one he's supposed to, and then he loses the ones he's supposed to. And I think that was last night why I picked Luque to begin with, was just because that's what fight that Geoff Neal loses. And I think that if he fought Gilbert Burns, I would take Gilbert because, no offense to Geoff, you have not done it 2 fights in a row against that level of talent. Now, I said last night in group, I think that last night says a lot more about Luque than it does about Neal. Part of that is because of Neal's track record. Part of that is because of kind of the trajectory that we see Luque on. But huge night for Geoff Neal. Huge night. In that first round, boxing, that fight's over, boys. That's 3 knockdowns. That fight's done. And I think that kind of that showed a lot. I think it kind of woke Geoff Neal up a little bit. As far as I don't think he thought it was going to really be that easy. And I hate to say that it was easy against Vicente Luque, but he kind of made it look easy against Luque. And in the broadcast team even said, I think it was Bisbing, said that they talked to Luque leading up to this fight, and he said, I hope that Geoff Neal fights the way he always has. I hope he stands in front of me and wants to just throw hands. Bro, why? Why? I mean, you shouldn't say that unless you look like you trained for it. And when you watch that fight, I don't know if you trained at all in your stand-up. Yeah, bro, and it was just let him come through. Just let him come through. I mean, I could not believe that Neal was just getting just a left straight. He wasn't even having to really set it up. He had to throw no kicks. He wasn't even throwing really shots to the body. He was just throwing left straight after left straight, and it was hitting Luque right in the forehead or right on the chin. And I mean, we knew that Neal had heavy hands. You don't walk around with a name like Hands of Steel if your hands are made of melted butter. You know, so obviously we knew the guy had heavy hands. I cannot believe that Luque didn't test his takedown defense a little more and make him prove that number one takedown defense percentage in the division is real. And I think that Burns will make him prove that. I think it's part of why he called out Burns and not some of these other guys, because he knows he's got good takedown defense. And if he can get Burns to stand with him, he knows he can put him out. I still will pick Burns in that fight, but I think that's a good matchup for Neal as long as he can stay on his feet. But huge night for Geoff Neal. I don't know what's next for Luque. He's kind of in that Thiago Santos realm almost, as far as like you're starting to show that you're not a top 5 guy. It's like, what do you really want your career to be? Because if you just want to kind of fight guys that some people have heard of and some people haven't, you can stick around for a while. You know, Shogun Hua did that for an extra 10 years, I think, in 205 division. But if you've kind of become addicted to the bright lights and the big names, like you've not really performed well enough to do that. So I think both those guys kind of got a lot to think about moving forward.
Yeah, you guys have kind of summed it up here. Geoff Neal looked, I thought, his best that he's done. It feels like every time they put him on this, you know, hey, this is a step up for him, and then he doesn't deliver, but will beat the guys like Kenny said he's supposed to. Tonight was last night was a guy that he wasn't supposed to. Vincent Luque has never been a dog in any fight he's ever been in. Always been favored, win or lose, you know, but always going into the fight has been favored. Was, you know, so Neal's going in the dog, and rightfully so, based off their career trajectories. But I mean, looked really good. I mean, Luque just stood there like this the whole time and just let Geoff Neal come at him. I mean, and Neal wasn't really going to the body too many times either. It was just straight, hey, I'm going to punch this guy in the face as many times as I possibly can and hope he goes down. Oh, well, guess he went down. I don't know what was going on with Vincent Luque in that fight, you know, as far as like what his strategy was. It was just like he thought he was supposed to win because it's Geoff Neal. You know, I mean, they call Geoff Neal the silent assassin, when he was real silent last night because there was no offense, because he was just standing there just getting punched in the face. I felt like it was Homer Simpson when he's fighting Mike Tyson and he just keeps getting punched in the face, but he wouldn't go to Homer just wouldn't go down, and Vincent Luque finally went down. It was just a wild, you know, big fight, step up for Geoff Neal. I like the guy that Burns has been kind of linked to for his next fight, and that's Jorge Masvidal, just because I think it's not the name that Jorge Masvidal wants, probably because it's not, Geoff Neal isn't the flashy name. But if Masvidal really wants to go back on a run and try to get back on the title, that's a fight that he can win, because Geoff Neal will stand there and they'll put on some fireworks, because they'll stand there and bang with each other and throw punches at each other. There's not going to be a takedown defense or a takedown between either one of them. They'll just stand there and fight. And that can be a run that, you know, Masvidal needs a win. And I'm not saying Geoff Neal could put Jorge out. I mean, could beat him. It's very, very possible. But I just think that's a fight that Jorge could win, and that's a fight that he needs to kind of get some momentum back going. So I like that fight for both of them more than I like either one of them fighting Gilbert, because I think because of Gilbert's, takedowns and his jiu-jitsu background. Give me the two boxers fighting each other, the two brawlers that want to stand and bang. To maybe just that's the fan in me, as far as just, hey, I want to see this exciting fight. But I also just think that that's momentum for Jorge if he wins. And then if Geoff Neal beats Jorge Masvidal, I mean, that skyrockets him as well.
I'm going to say it again. I said it last night in group. The only person that fight benefits outside of a fan is Geoff Neal. That is a terrible fight for Jorge Masvidal. Not even just a little. No. Not even just a little bit bad. A guy that has already shown that his chin is vulnerable does not fight a man that has a 5-to-1 knockdown ratio in the UFC. You don't do that. It's a terrible fight for Jorge Masvidal. He needs to fight somebody who's a little more well-rounded, who might have some stand-up and will want to bang with him, but not somebody who can bang with him. You want somebody that wants to bang, not somebody that can bang if you're Jorge. It's a great fight for Geoff Neal because Usman has already showed you Jorge can go to sleep. Not just a little bit to sleep. Jorge can be on a highlight reel and go to sleep. Well, Geoff Neal's a guy that can put you on a highlight reel pretty quick if your chin is suspect. And I think that's a fight that Geoff Neal wants, but that's not a fight Jorge Masvidal wants, and that's why it's a fight he won't take.
That's the only fight. I mean, so that's the only time Jorge's ever been put to sleep like that. So, I mean, let's not say he's just getting knocked out by knockout.
I'm not saying that he's just getting knocked out. What I'm saying is he has now shown that his chin is vulnerable. There's one point Chuck Liddell had only been knocked out like that by Rashad Evans. And now that list is about this long by people that have done it. And I don't think that Jorge Masvidal is trying to be next on Geoff Neal's list, trying to climb this ladder. But that's a fight I want if I'm Geoff Neal. Give me Luque on the way down. Give me Masvidal on the way down. And I'll just keep climbing my way up until I can sneak into this title mix. At some point, someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to go leave. Usman's going to go fight for the 205 belt or whatever psycho plans he has. And Neal just keeps knocking these old dudes off. And he's got a chance to, and no offense, Luque, I know you're not old, but in fighter years, you're a little older than the rest. But if Neal just keeps picking these guys off, then he just squeezes into an interim fight at some point, and no one really even sees him coming.
I mean, he could be Jorge Masvidal of 2019. Like, nobody really saw that run by Jorge Masvidal coming in, in 2019. And then next thing you know, Jorge's having 2 title fights.
But Jorge did that coming off the back of a miracle knee that only happens 1 out of 1,000 fights. Without that Ben Askren fight, Jorge Masvidal's time is over. Without that Askren fight, Masvidal's career does not go that way.
Well, I agree. I'm just saying he could end up being like that. You know what I mean? Geoff Neal.
That's why I said if you're Neal, you want that Masvidal fight. Let me put out Vicente Luque, who everybody said was the guy on the way up until he lost. Let me take Luque, and then I'm gonna turn around and knock out Jorge Masvidal, who at one point was a bigger name than Usman when Usman had the belt at one point. So if you can get those 2 fights on your resume, this is the time that you want to fight both those dudes. If you've ever wanted to fight Jorge Masvidal, it is August 7th, 2022.
Yeah, but like you said, that fight does nothing for Jorge. And I said it yesterday. Jorge's at the point where, I mean, he knows that he's only got a couple fights left, and he wants money fights, and that's what he's looking for. And I mean, Geoff Neal's just not a money fight. And if you look at that division, there's a lot of guys already linked up. There's not a lot of openings in that division. And that's why Jorge's sitting back and he's trying to bait Chimaev. He's sitting here, saying, oh, Chimaev hasn't proven anything to me. He's not as good as everybody says, this and that. Don't be surprised if Nate beats him. Jorge's just trying to set the bait. Because if Chimaev wins that fight, Jorge's going to try to talk his way into it. And Jorge's been good about that. He knocked Darren Till out in London, and then he landed the knee on Askren, and then he learned how to sell himself, man. And he's been in title fights. He had the BMF belt come out of nowhere for him and Nate Diaz. So Jorge knows how to sell himself, and he's at a point in his career where that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to make money, and I just don't think Geoff Neal's the guy that's going to do it. That's the only reason I brought Wonder Boy up earlier, is because a lot of that division right now has got matchups. Jorge's not going to fight Geoff Neal, so if it's not Gilbert Burns, there's not really anybody else with an opening at the moment in the top 10 of that division. But yeah, Jorge. There's been rumors of Jorge and Burns. I don't like that fight for Jorge either, because I think it's a very dangerous fight for Jorge. But Jorge is in a spot. He's trying to bait Chimaev. He's trying to get Connor to come out and fight him. He's trying to get some money fights. And I just don't think Geoff Neal's on that level.
I mean, is Gilbert Burns on that money level? You're saying he's a big, talking about, he wants money fights, but Gilbert Burns isn't a huge money fight. I mean,
anybody who's fought for the belt is a bigger name than Geoff Neal.
Dangerous.
Anybody who's fought for a strap is a bigger name than Geoff Neal, though.
I'll agree with that. That's the only thing that Burns has, is he's fought for the title.
That's it, but it's a big thing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
he wobbled the champ. At the end of the day, Gilbert Burns can stand there and say, I wobbled the champ and no one else could.
And he banged with Chimaev. I mean, he banged 3 rounds with the killer that had, just been annihilating everybody,
Agreed.
Yeah, but I think if that fight happens 5 times, I think it happens differently. And I don't mean that as far as Burns wins. I mean, you're only going to get Chimaev underneath the bright lights for the first time, 1 time. Every other time after that, the rust is gone. There's no first-time jitters. There's no nothing. I think that If Chimaev and Burns rematched right now, I think that fight's over in the second round.
So let's talk about Vincent Luque here. I mean, this is a guy that was probably one fight away from the title, was even a backup fighter for the title. I think, was it, it was either the Usman fight or the Usman Masvidal 2 or even the Colby Usman 2. He was like the backup fighter for that. I mean, this was a guy that was like, even the champ was like, hey, it looks like I got some new blood when he choked out Michael Chiesa. I mean, this guy, he was on a run. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He had like won like 10 of his last like 11 fights. Now he's lost his last 2 here. One to, decision to Belal Muhammad, and then last night to Geoff Neal. I mean, what happened to the scary guy that was one fight away, and now he's, moving down in the ranks instead of, he beats Belal. He probably is maybe waiting for this title fight after Leon. Or maybe they give him maybe they give him Colby, and then that winner would get, I don't think Colby's going to get 3 cracks at Usman, but maybe he gets Usman after that. But I mean, what happens to Vincent Luque, and what happened to Vincent Luque, this guy that Craig that, was just so close to, being in that title picture?
Sometimes we see this, man. Sometimes we see these guys get on these runs, and I don't know what it is. Sometimes they get in their head after their first loss, and it just takes them some time to rebound, or sometimes they're just elite against a certain level of competition, but just can't exactly hang around with the rest. I really thought that the fight that he had with Muhammad kind of showed us a lot about Muhammad because of who Luque was at that point in time, and the run that he had been on. But we'll see. Like we were saying when we were talking about Geoff Neal, like going into this fight, this was a fight that Luque was supposed to win. He was favored to win, and fighting against a guy outside of the top 10, this was a fight that was supposed to kind of get him back on track, get him, a top 5 opponent after this, and get him back in that conversation. So at this point, like Kenny kind of alluded to earlier, he's almost in the Thiago Santos realm, where now you're falling down, where you're going to have to beat a guy in the 10 to 15 range just to prove that you kind of still belong around here. So I don't know. It's hard to say what exactly happened to him. Like I said, that loss that he had to Muhammad, I just kind of thought that showed us a lot of who Belal was, because Luque is a tough dude. But yeah, we'll see what kind of matchup he gets next. But he's in a spot where he's got to kind of just about prove that he still belongs in the top 10 range.
Yeah, I think a fight that I like for him next, and I know he probably wouldn't like this fight as much as I do, is like a Neil Magny type. I was just kind of looking at the rankings, and I think that's a guy that kind of makes sense. He already fought Michael Chiesa. He's kind of in that same boat as well, that same range as well. But I like a fight with him and Neil Magny. The problem is I was just thinking about that, and after we kind of seen last night his stand-up defense against Geoff Neal, I'm not sure if he's really wanting to fight Neil Magny. Neil Magny's a long dude. He's got great jabs, great straights, just like Geoff Neal. Now he doesn't have quite the power. I don't think he's going to put Luque on his ass 3 times in the first round. But he's a long-rangey striker that I don't really think you want to fight or stand up with. And really, I think what happened to Luque, man, is he just caught a bunch of dudes on the way up that he could go to. I mean, he 8 submission victories is what happened, and then you start getting up against these guys that don't necessarily go down as easy, or when they do go down, it's a lot harder to get them out. A guy like Belal is a great wrestler, and a guy like Luque, who made so much of his success on the ground, you get a guy like Belal who is hard to control when you get there. Belal, he's good takedowns, great control on the ground. He doesn't do a lot when he gets there, but amazing control once he's on the ground, and he can control your wrist, he can control your head, he can keep you where he wants. And it gave Luque trouble. That's why I thought last night, we'd really see him kind of test that takedown defense of Neal a little more and kind of get that, especially once he started getting pieced up. I thought, how are we going to see Thiago Santos be able to adjust on the fly and go for 19 takedown attempts, and Luque goes for 3? And I think 2 of those was because he got rocked and just kind of fell into him and attempted a takedown. So I think that Luque, someone, we kind of set it that 10 to 15 range. I like a Neil Magny fight for him. I think that's a 12. Kind of prove to us that you're still a top 10 guy. If you can beat him, then you kind of fight in that 5 to 8 range and kind of show that you're still up there again. Maybe you can get another crack at Neil. if he ends up having to sit for too long. I know that we had kind of brought up with Neal. I even kind of pointed it out, and then I almost backtracked on it. I kind of like the Wonder Boy fight. Give him a chance to avenge that loss. Wonder Boy, we kind of said after his last fight, he's a great top 5 gatekeeper. Well, go gatekeep the top 5 if that's what you're going to do. So I don't hate that Wonder Boy fight if Wonder Boy's sitting there and doesn't have one either. But I think Luque next, probably Neil Magny's a great fight for him, I think, and just kind of prove you're still stuck around. And if you're Neil Magny, maybe you can get a big name on your resume and get that win, and maybe you can take that step up that Geoff Neal got to take.
Yeah, I like both those fights. Yeah, you alluded to Vince's already lost to Wonder Boy. I mean, that was several years ago now. He just recently beat Michael Chiesa, who's 11. So Neil Magny would be 12. I think him or the
No,
Leech.
Geoff Neal lost to Wonder Boy. So I said 3 fights ago,
Oh,
Geoff Neal lost to Wonder
yeah.
Boy.
Well, Vince Luque lost to Wonder Boy.
Yeah.
Too as well. Maybe run that back because Wonder Boy doesn't have that fight. But I'm looking at maybe the Neil Magny, the Leech would be who's sitting at 14. I don't know if they do it, but and I wouldn't take the fight if I'm Vincent Luque. Shavkat, my boy Shavkat Rakhmonov. I like him. He's sitting at 10. Maybe they put Luque and him together as far as like, hey, this is the last up and comer you're gonna have to face. I think that'd be a proper step up for Shavkat as well. So I kind of like, looking at that fight as well. Shavkat just fought recently too, so the timeline kind of matches up here. So I mean, it's just crazy how a guy can be so close, but yet now so far away. I mean, that's just how it's crazy. But I mean, if Vincent goes out and wins, 2 in a row, 3 in a row, he'll be right back right where he's at right now. 1 fight, 2 fights away. So.
This is a small issue that we see. We bitch about it as fans, and especially guys that got to talk about it every week. When guys sit and wait and they won't take a fight, won't take a fight, won't take a fight. But you see Luque, and Luque is kind of the exact reason why you don't. Luque is the exact reason why you wait, because when you're willing to go out there, you're risking a loss every time. And you kind of saw, a year and a half ago, Luque was the dude. He was on the way up. There was nobody going to stop him. He looked absolutely indestructible. Now here we are 2 years later, and it's like, is he even a top 10 guy anymore? And that just shows to show you, man, 2 losses can put you back very, very far when you're only fighting twice a year. 2 losses just set you back 3 years. If you're 3 fights away now from a title fight, that's 2 years at best. That's if everything goes right and stays on schedule before you ever get a chance at that strap again. And it's unfortunate because you do see guys have to be more picky. But that's also the name of the game. When guys are on the way up and you got dudes that are knocking guys out and finishing dudes in the prelims. If you're a featured prelim fighter or the first card or the first fight on a pay-per-view and you get a knockout and the dude 2 fights ahead of you is ranked 5 spots ahead of you, let me tell you something. And he takes a loss, that guy will be fighting on a worse fight or a worse card situation than you are next time. That's just the way life goes. And that's why you can't really afford to take those losses, but you got to take those fights. And, you got to show up. Geoff Neal's always a dude who'll take those fights. Now we finally seen him get it done. You got to be willing to take them fights, though. But it sucks to see a guy like Luque who, if there was less things happening in that division, less up-and-comers in that division, he can probably hang around for a little more. But it's just not the time to be on your way down in the welterweight division because there's a bunch of guys on the way up.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some guys that are still sticking around. I mean, Colby Covington still doesn't even have a fight yet in that division. He's got to come out from witness protection. So from guys on the up and coming, but the guys on the up, we just had the 2 tough winners announced last night. Usman and I'm gonna forget her name. If you guys can shout out her name, if you know her name, I'm gonna look it up. I forget her name.
Juliana Miller.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig. Juliana Miller and Usman both are the tough winners here. I'm not going to ask what their prediction is, but Kenny, what's the ceiling for both of these fighters as far as going forward? I mean, we've seen tough winners become champions, but that was early on. We haven't seen the latest, even the Contender Series guys. I think Jamal Hill is actually the highest ranked Contender Series. What is the ceiling for here for Usman and and Miller?
Well, the
Your
Contender
sister Miller.
Series, I think that that's my cousin Juliana. That's what Amber asked me last night. She said, because I always say, "Oh, it's my cousin." She said, "Oh, is that your cousin?" I said, "Hey, I'll tell you. Let's see how this fight goes. I'll let you know." As soon as she took her down, I said, "Yeah, it's my cousin Juliana." No, but I
Well,
think when
get
you
your
look
cousin on the show, will you?
right, yeah, if I could. No, I think the ceiling's hard to say. It's hard to really predict the career trajectories of these people when they go out and win these tough competitions. But I think when you look at a guy like Mo, a guy like in a heavyweight division, that he's got heavy hands, man. All you got to do is be able to put a guy out, and he can do that. He kind of showed that he's got a lot of holes in his game as well. He's going to have to shore up before he's able to kind of go out and make a run. But a heavyweight dude with heavy hands, I mean, he's going to have a chance to make a run in the division. So I think you'll see the opportunity be there. Can you win those fights? Can you be the one that catches and not the one that gets caught? Will kind of determine what his career looks like. It's going to help having his older brother in his corner all the time. Being in the gym with him, that's not going to hurt anything. I think you're going to see his wrestling continue to evolve. I know right now he just likes to knock people out, but I think you're going to see him become a little more well-rounded. So I think his ceiling is high. I mean, he's got top 7 power, right? I think we can pretty much guarantee that. Can he develop that top 7, top 5 all-around skill? I think we'll see. Juliana, I think her ceiling is probably a lot higher, just based off the fact that she's a tough winner, as inexperienced as she is. And I know she said last night, we got to quit with the inexperienced stuff, kind of like Jamal Hill said too, because all that means is you get that much better every time you're in there. And I think over the course of the tough show, we kind of seen that Juliana Miller did get better, every time she was out there, and she did learn a little bit. I think last night you kind of saw she learns every minute of a fight almost. She went for a takedown early and was not able to kind of keep that control and push it and work that ground and pound. When she got the takedown in the second round, there was no looking back. And she decided this is going to be the one, and she started putting elbows in her face, and that was it. So I think that her ceiling is a lot higher just because she has more room to grow, and she's only 26, so she's a lot younger. If she can start building that hype train and just keep rattling off some wins, I think she's got a chance. But I think both their ceilings are very high just because they're situations. A heavy-handed heavyweight, his ceiling's got to be pretty high. And a young, gifted flyweight, I think you got to think her ceiling's got to be pretty high. So I'm definitely excited for the future of both those tough winners.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, at this point, in their careers, all we can really do to, give a projection is kind of look at their talent and their skill levels. And you got to think that Muhammad Usman, kind of like Kenny said, he's definitely got some holes in his game, but he's in that heavyweight division. You just got to catch somebody, and he kind of showed that last night. And I thought he was kind of looking better in that fight. So in the tough series, I actually had Perez beating him in the last round, 2-1 on my scorecard. So I actually picked against Muhammad last night because he definitely does have some flaws in his game, but he's got a big brother that's a world champion. So you got to think that he's going to continue learning. He's going to continue being in the gym. He's going to continue to evolve. So his ceiling, I mean, you got to think that his ceiling is high if he can do the right things in the heavyweight division. And Juliana Miller, I'm a big fan of hers. I was a big fan on the show, kind of pulling for her skill set. You just got to think her ceiling's high as well. And in the flyweight division, she could be a problem. She's got a decent stand-up game. She showed last night that she can overpower a lot of these girls on the ground, and she could be a problem to the flyweight women. So I agree with Kenny. Both their ceilings at this point, you got to say, are pretty high.
Yeah, I'm on board with you guys. I think Usman has he'll reach his floor first, I think, just due to I mean, you alluded to it, the heavyweight division. You win 2-3 fights in the heavyweight division, you're right in the mix. I mean, I'm talking top 10 type mix, and he's got that knockout power. It's just because it's a heavyweight in that division isn't top to bottom doesn't have the most depth. So I think, and he's got the name Usman, so he's a marketable guy. So I think he'll be his rocket will be faster, but he'll be able to then Miller, who's young, Miller was the youngest fighter in the house. So it'll be a little bit slower burn and slower build for her. But I think the UFC will get behind Usman faster and quicker, and he'll probably be able to get things done faster and quicker just due to the division he's in heavyweights. You win 2 or 3 in a row. Next thing you know, you're fighting freaking Derek Lewis on a pay-per-view card. I mean, we just saw it last weekend, and nobody knows who you are, but everybody knows who he is because he'll be always be Usman's little brother, Usman's little big brother. So, boys, it's been reported that can you go ahead? You want to talk about the featherweight division? What's going on there before we wrap up here?
Well, man, I mean, it's exactly what we talked about after the year fight, right? After a year in Ortega. The biggest thing we said as soon as it happened was, I'm not sure which one of us said it, but I know watching the show, I seen it. We all said, man, I really hope Yair is willing to take an interim fight. And we were worried that he wouldn't. And we were worried that he wouldn't for this exact reason. Because now he's come out and said, why would I fight an interim fight? Why would I fight Josh Emmett? I'm knocking on the door of the real title. Why would I fight for a plastic belt, basically? Well, because when you look around, there's 0 other people in the top 10 that you can justify fighting Josh Emmett for an interim title fight. Volk is going to be out no matter what, so there's going to be an interim title fight. And so when you look at this, I mean, I was looking at the rankings all morning, all week, preparing for this show, just trying to think, like, who is someone else you can put up there? Calvin Kattar just took the loss. Ortega's hurt. Max is, who knows?
Arnold Allen.
Is he healthy enough? Can you take a guy because Arnold Allen, I think, is the guy that you do it with. But at the same time, can you take a guy that's been hurt and doesn't really have that signature win and say, hey, now you're going to fight for an interim belt? Now, you can if the real number one contender, Yair, says, I refuse to fight for it. I think then you can do it. And I think then you do it just honestly, just to kind of prove a point. And I hate to say, slap in the face with it, but you don't want to fight one? All right, well, we just said that taking 2 losses will set you back 2 years. Well, missing out on a fight, if he doesn't take that interim fight, no matter what, that winner is fighting Volk. So now he's already 9 months behind. If they beat Volk, well, Volk is arguably the featherweight GOAT, so he's guaranteed a rematch. So now you're 15 months behind. Then your fight gets scheduled. Now you're 22 months by the time you actually take that fight. So are you going to sit there for 2 years and wait to fight Volk? You're going to have to take a fight with somebody. Now, if you don't take this interim title fight, and then you end up having to fight somebody a year from now, you still set yourself back a year because you didn't take this fight, and you're going to end up having to fight an Ortega on the way back. And I don't know if you really want to fight Ortega on the way back and give him a chance to run that fight back. So I think that the featherweight division is murky, and I think Yair, somebody in his camp, has got to say, man, I get it, but if you don't take this fight, there's absolutely no telling the damage it can do to your career.
No, for sure. So I didn't even see the report where Yair had come out and said it, and one of you guys had messaged it in group and told me about it. That Yair basically said, "Why would I fight for an interim belt when I'm next in line for the title fight? Why would you? Because you have to. That's why, Yair. Because if you don't, then 2 other guys are going to, and then they're going to get the title shot that you think that you're sitting around waiting for, and then you just get skipped in line." Kind of like you said, he'll get stuck in that spot to where he's sitting for a year. Volk's chasing other titles, coming back, fighting the interim champ. Yair's going to have to take a fight at some point, and it is going to be a Brian Ortega on the backswing. And then, then we see all of a sudden Yair is Luque, where, he loses that fight. He falls down, lose one more, man, you're out of the conversation. You might not even be in the top 10 around here anymore, So, you might feel like you've earned the title shot and the shot at Volk, but you got to look up and see how things are unfolding. And you got to understand that if there's an interim fight going to be made, you got to take that fight. And if you don't, then you're forfeiting the next shot at Volkanovski to whoever takes the interim belt. So to me, I mean, Yair can pull that card, but at the end of the day, he has to take that fight.
The only way you get Volk next guaranteed is to have an interim belt in your hand. That's the only person who's guaranteed to fight Volkanovski when he comes back to 145. That's right. It. So you got to go get that belt.
Volk has said he's down for the interim title fight because it's more money, 2 belts, belt versus belt, once he comes back. So I think you could do Yair versus Josh Emmett, and I mentioned Arnold Allen. It looks like Calvin Kattar and his camp want Arnold Allen, and then maybe that if Arnold Allen beats Calvin Kattar, there's that signature win that he needs as far as maybe making that rank. And if I'm Arnold Allen, I'm hoping it's reported he was on MMA Hour with Ariel Juan. He said his hands are better, but they were just like broken from his last fight, but they're healing and he's almost ready to go. He's looking for later this year, which I mean that would be perfect. If I'm Arnold Allen, I'm trying to beat Calvin Kattar and then put my name in that conversation before the interim title fights and be like, hey man, I think he's won like 7 in a row. This would be 8 in a row or so if he beats Calvin Kattar. Calvin Cater's he could say that he beat Josh Emmett. That fight was really, really close. But it went on Emmett's side. A lot of people still feel like Calvin Kattar won that fight. So, and Yair, I mean, these guys, Yair didn't really beat Brian Ortega. I mean, his last win, lost to Max Holloway, but I mean, he did get the victory over Brian, but it was an injury stoppage almost. So, I mean, everybody has question marks in this featherweight division. It'll be interesting what Dana does here. So, from the former talking about the featherweight to one of the best former featherweights, Connor McGregor is now starring in a movie. He Roadhouse remake here. He tweeted out that hey, it's time to go make the easy money. Is Connor over? Are we ever going to see over in the MMA? Is it done in the UFC? I mean, he's had these fake retirements several different times. He's had more retirements than Craig's been with. Craig's got baby mamas. So, so I mean, what's next for Connor? Is he back? Is he done? I mean, and who should be next for Connor?
All right, so before we talk about people that don't matter anymore, if you're Arnold Allen and you got a chance to fight Calvin Kattar, the last 3 people that fought Calvin Kattar have fought for the belt, and one of those people he beat, and he still fought for the belt. So if you're Arnold Allen, you've got to want that fight. Now, moving on to people that do not matter, Connor McGregor. I mean, is he done? Who cares? I think we said after Poirier he was done. Now, whether he fought again, but I think we already kind of said he was done. So is he done fighting? Who knows? I think we're going to find out he's not a very good actor, so I'm not sure how much he's going to find acting to be easy money. I think he's going to get one shot at this, and he's going to fall flat on his face, and he's going to come back and fight again. But, hey, make your money while you can. I think that one thing, once we've seen fighters become actors, they rarely become great fighters again. So, I mean, you just kind of seen when Randy Couture started doing the Untouchables or whatever the hell were the Expendables. He was kind of done. I think, Donald Cerrone waited to get into it until he was done. Gina Carano, all of them kind of waited. You worry me a little bit. You start doing movies during your career, especially whenever you take a couple losses that we're all looking at of like, this is a huge turning point for you. And rather than focus on getting back in the MMA cage, you're talking about trying to fight Floyd Mayweather again and go act. So I don't know if is Connor done as far as like we never see him again? I think obviously we're going to see him in the UFC again, but I do think Connor's done as far as he's going to come back and fight a Nate Diaz or a Jorge or something. He's not coming back and taking any fight that means anything with any sort of belt that is real. And I say that acknowledging the BMF belt is not real.
Craig, I mean, this is the UFC's biggest star. They're going to throw the biggest amount of money at him. He doesn't need the money. He's like a millionaire already. Doesn't need the money. But I mean, what's your thoughts here? Is he coming back? And who do you think if he does come back?
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of agree with Kenny, and we've talked about it before. Like, Conor McGregor is done as far as, a championship contender in the UFC. Conor McGregor, I don't want to say that Conor McGregor is now a gimmick, but Conor McGregor is somewhat now. It's all for money. Conor McGregor is just a selling point these days, and we've seen it before with, pro athletes, football players, boxers, fighters. They start making movies, kind of like Kenny said, usually means it's about the end of the road. We don't really see them do anything meaningful in their sports after that. I don't think that Conor McGregor is done in the octagon. I think we do see him fight again. it could be a cupcake fight that Dana throws him so Conor McGregor doesn't, go out of the UFC with a broken leg, losing to Dustin Poirier. Dana White is a big Conor McGregor fan, and he's gonna do McGregor right at the end of the day, and it's gonna be whatever McGregor wants. It's kind of always been that way. I saw a clip a little while back where Dana White, some people were accusing him of giving Conor McGregor special treatment. And he basically said, well, Conor McGregor's a special guy. In his prime, he would take any fight that he wanted, and he made me a ton of money. So, Conor McGregor, he gets special treatment because he's a special guy for my company. And that's just kind of the way it is. So at the end of the day, Conor McGregor, he's going to get what he wants. Everybody's in line. Everybody wants that fight. Michael Chandler wants it. Jorge Masvidal wants it. Anybody that can get their hands on a Conor McGregor fight's going to take it. But at the end of the day, it's what Conor wants.
When was the last time you saw the champ call out somebody ranked outside the top 10? And
Right.
That was the first name Charles Oliveira said after he beat Gaethje. He said, I'd love to fight Conor McGregor, dude, outside the top 10. That's the kind of pull Conor McGregor has.
That's
Right.
because, he came from the slums of Brazil. So Conor fight, as in, Shane O'Mac says, show me the money, so that's just kind of
That's the next step for Conor, right? Bringing up
Yeah.
Shane O'Mac. That's the next step for Conor, right?
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
that's not even a joke. If you're going to start doing movies, you might as well go do WWE. You can still make a bunch of money over there.
Oh, yeah.
Look at Ronda Rousey.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm gonna give a percentage here, give a name and a percentage. I think we're all in agreement. Conor's not fighting this year, but next year, what's the percentage and a name, Kenny, real quick, for Conor? That he fights
Jorge Masvidal, and there's a 65% chance he fights him.
Craig?
Well, I was going to go with Jorge. No matter what, I'm going to go 40% all the way around. I guess, shoot, man, Nate Diaz is in his contract talks and everything else. Jorge's about the best option. I don't think Conor's going to come back and take a guy like Michael Chandler. I think Jorge is a guy, that's a fight that Conor could win. They could sell it as a BMF fight. I think that fight just makes a ton of sense with Jorge and Conor. Tons of money on the line with both of their names. But I'm gonna give it like a 40% chance here with Conor.
Yeah, I think Jorge is the fight to make as far as just like name status for him. I was trying to think of somebody like you guys said, like a cupcake fight or somebody like that that's got a big name that look much like they did with Cowboy. But there's not really that kind of guy out there right now off the top of my head. So I would probably say Jorge, and I think it's less than, I think it's probably about 20%, 25% that he fights next year. I just think, he doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the UFC money. The UFC almost needs Conor more than they need, Conor needs the UFC at this point.
That's the biggest lie you've ever told yourself. There's no way you believe that, do you?
I don't really know if they don't really need each other.
When's the last time Conor won a fight? UFC has done just fine without Conor being on top of the game, without him winning fights, without him doing anything. Conor, on the other hand, yeah, he's made some money, but his notoriety is not done just fine. He's a meme now. Him getting put to sleep became a Jake Paul chain. I think that Conor needs the UFC if he wants to stay at the level that he has been as far as a global presence. He needs the UFC more than the UFC needs him by far.
When Conor's not fighting, he's still using the UFC as an outlet to keep his name out there, to keep people talking about him, And I saw a stat. I think they said Conor McGregor made like 22 million off UFC and like 158 million off of endorsements. But when Conor McGregor is not associated with the UFC anymore and he's not doing fighting and all he's doing is some weird Roadhouse remake that's probably honestly not going to be very good, you start losing that endorsement money. People stop caring about, Conor McGregor as a whole. So, I kind of agree. Conor McGregor does need the UFC. The UFC is a sport that it will carry on. It's lost. Legends come and go. It's lost greats. New ones come along, and the sport, the fan base sticks around. Now, I do think that during Conor McGregor's prime, there were certain people that were interested in Conor McGregor and interested in the UFC that were not fight fans, that don't pay attention to UFC. So, obviously, Conor McGregor was huge for the UFC, But at this day and age, the UFC probably does almost help Conor McGregor more.
I was just meant like, so like when Connor fights, the UFC's numbers still go up. Like he's still that top
Huge.
draw, top name. Yes. But I mean, like Connor doesn't need the UFC money anymore either. Like he's still making, money off of whiskey and all these endorsements. I mean, we've seen that. So from possible fights to fights being made, it's been signed on the dotted line. MSG, Israel Adesanya fighting Michael Pereira in November. I'm not going to ask you guys for a prediction. I mean, Izzy is just a slight favorite, not a huge favorite in this fight. But Kenny, what's your initial thoughts on Izzy versus Pereira at MSG?
My initial thoughts on exactly what you just said is thank you, Dana. Putting that fight as going to be the main event on a card at MSG, I think is good for all fight fans. I think anybody that is been on the train of saying that Israel Adesanya is a boring fighter over these last few fights, this is going to be the one you want to watch then. Because much like I said, we're not going to do predictions. We're obviously going to have a whole show for that. But just like with the Sean Strickland fight, I said, Strickland's the guy that likes to fight for decisions. Well, Alex is the guy you can't fight for decisions with. And it's the exact same thing all over again. Izzy is the one person on the planet you don't have to tell that Pereira can knock him out. Because, I mean, we've all seen the videos now ever since the Pereira Strickland fight. We know exactly what he can do to Izzy in that environment. Yeah, it was kickboxing. This is MMA. But as far as we're concerned, these two guys, it's a kickboxing match. There's not going to be anything going to the ground here. These guys are going to stand and bang. It's going to be a very exciting fight for fans. My initial thoughts, man, I'm just very, very excited for that fight. I'm glad they got it on paper and they didn't wait, and we can just kind of be pumped about it and have something to talk about leading up to it rather than just maybes and what ifs.
Craig, Izzy's come out and he said he's ready for the fire. He's not running from this guy. What's your initial thoughts here on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, this is the fight we wanted, right? Right after Pereira put Strickland down, this is the fight we were talking about. This is the one we wanted. There's a lot of hype train behind it because of the past kickboxing matches that these two have had. Pereira is still kind of young here in the UFC. Izzy's been around a while, but these two have history, and Pereira ain't no rookie. I mean, he's been in the fight game for a while, and he's kind of proven himself. He's got a name, and people respect that dude. So yeah, I feel like we kind of knew the fight was coming. To throw it on that MSG card is great because that card's going to end up, it's going to end up a banger. And that's just, to me, I'm excited because this Pereira is, if Izzy don't get up for this fight and Izzy don't, kind of show up a little more and have a little more exciting fight for this guy, then, then who does he do it for? This is kind of the revenge for Izzy, and Izzy's been great in the UFC, so it's weird to say that he's got the revenge to get here in this fight against this young kid, but there's a great story behind it. I'm glad, like Kenny said, I'm glad we got it on paper, got a date on it, and being on the MSG card, I think is just great.
So my biggest fear of this fight is it's Yael Romero versus Izzy too, because Romero's kind of like could knock out people too, and Izzy just stayed away from him and just kicked his legs and put us all to sleep. Izzy's such a great counter striker, but Pereira can also, I think he's going to put pressure on him and force him to fight and bang here. At least that's my hope. That's my hope that's what happens. My biggest fear is it's Izzy Romero too, and we're all, the next morning pissing and moaning how it's a boring fight. Because, we haven't seen Izzy in a, real great fight that, was like had some fireworks in a while. So I hope this is the fight that, I think him getting that criticism from the last fight of it being boring and it not being action packed, I think he's going to try to bring also that fight. Plus he'll have that revenge factor into it as well.
He's been getting that criticism for the last 3 or 4 fights, though, and it's not really changed anything.
Right.
So I don't know if that's what you're going to see change it. What I think you're going to see change it is Alex Pereira. And the reason for that is you bring up Romero. Now, that is something that we all have to be worried about. You can look at other dudes that he's fought that You know, Costa was a swinger and banger on his way up, and he no longer was when he fought Izzy. But I think the biggest difference between Pereira and everybody else that Izzy's had to fight is everybody else has made their name in the UFC. All of their notoriety comes from being in the UFC and all of their successes in the UFC, where Pereira's not. Pereira's almost in that Yuri range where they're young enough in their UFC careers. Who gives a shit? Let it swing. He's got no reason to go out there and fight any sort of a timid fight against Izzy, because losing a decision to Izzy, what's it going to do for you? Nothing. It's not going to do you any good any more good than getting knocked out by Izzy trying to go for it. And so I think when you take a guy like Pereira, not just because of where he's at in his career trajectory, but he's also one of the few people on the planet that got the confidence of wins over Israel Adesanya. And not just wins, but wins standing up in the exact same thing that you can do in MMA. It's not anywhere else. It wasn't a grappling match. It wasn't nothing. It was a win in the stand-up cage or in the stand-up arena where you're able to use your hands and feet to punch people from 19 feet away like Alex Pereira can do. I think that's another big difference between him and Romero is Romero was scared to get inside. You know, you watch Romero Costa, and both of them are short-armed dudes with heavy hands, and neither of them were able to get inside on Adesanya, where Pereira doesn't have to. Pereira is one of the few dudes who can hit him from across the cage. As soon as the ref says, let's go, both those dudes can hit each other from where they're standing. They do not have to get any closer than that. And that's why I think that Pereira is going to be able to keep that pressure up. I don't think it's going to have a chance to be a boring fight. I think if Izzy thinks this fight's going to the 5th round, I do believe that he's mistaken. I think somebody is going to have to get finished before that because it's just not going to be that kind of fight. I don't think Pereira's going to sit back and let it get to the 5th round.
I hope you're right. I hope
I hope I am too, because I could easily be wrong.
Yeah. I hope you're right on that. Before we get to our last part and preview next week's main event here, we got one comment here. Dan always we're part of his community. Let's Talk Sports. He says, "Hi guys, great stuff. Love everything you do in the community, and here to continue my UFC education." Thanks, Dan.
Thanks,
always
Dan.
check out all Dan's stuff. We're on there quite a bit. As you see, we got Let's Talk Sports in our logo. Part of their community. We're doing great big things. So over there at Let's Talk Sports, so make sure you guys are subscribing and sharing. I mean, Kenny's got it here, even in the subscription guide, covers every sport on planet Earth. So, and if there was a sport playing on Mars, I'm sure Dan could get a guy that was covering that to talk about it. So
I seen Dan post in the community the other day asking for somebody that can talk about cricket. Crickets. Can't talk about no crickets.
I can talk about crickets, the ones that are chirping in my backyard. That's about it.
No, Dan's trying to do big things over there.
So we appreciate all the love and support Dan gives us. So we try to share it back as well. Boys, I'm not going to be here next Sunday, but let's just preview this card. If you want to make a prediction, or just the main event, I guess, because if you want to make a prediction, go ahead and make a prediction. It's Chito Vera versus the veteran. You know, why am I drawing a blank?
Dominic Cruz.
Dominic Cruz, thank you. In Dominic Cruz's hometown of San Diego, and Chito's from SoCal too. So this is a big step up for Chito. I mean, if Dominic Cruz loses this fight, his title dreams will probably be diminished. Chito he's young enough to bring himself back, but we'll see. You know, we'll see. I think if Cruz loses, it's probably over as far as title contention for him. So, Craig, what's your thoughts here? I mean, as our SoCal kind of guy, Chito and Cruz here.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of agree with you. If Dominic Cruz does lose this fight, I mean, he's out of the title contention, and I feel like, I mean, I'm getting old, man, and I feel like Dominic Cruz been in the damn octagon my entire life. Like I couldn't believe when they said that he was 37. I figured this guy had to be like 44, because I feel like he has been fighting forever, and his record is good, man. He's still a respectable dude in there. But if we're giving picks, I'm taking the young gun, and I'm going Chito to win the SoCal Fight Night battle.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Craig just said he's 36, but he's got a 56-year-old man body in Dominic Cruz. I mean, he's fought, who's who of this bantamweight division. You could probably put the crown on him as far as the guy who's just fought everybody and anybody from, past, present. And if there was a future, he might fight another future kid coming up as well. I mean, he's been everywhere. He's a former champion. But, Chito has looked absolutely incredible his last few fights here. What's your thoughts here on next Saturday's card?
Yeah, I mean, when Cheeto beat O'Malley, I thought it was a fluke. I thought, okay, we're gonna find out. Cheeto's gonna get exposed in his next fight, and then he put Frankie Edgar on a meme, and all he's done is look better and better and better. And I think that I'm really excited to watch Cheeto fight Cruz. Honestly, I think it's going to be a good fight. I think it's two guys with Cheetos doesn't have the unorthodox stand up like Cruz has. Cruz has just got the insane footwork, and he fights that weird capoeira looking style that works for him. It's always worked for him. I do worry a little bit. I know he's a little older, but I just think that Dominic Cruz is one of those dudes. Like he's just always 26. I don't know what's going on. He was 26 when he was 16, and he's 26 when he's 37. I don't know how it works. The dude's just always 26. We've seen him take 5 years off before and then come back and put TJ out, to get the belt. So I think that Cruz is a dude you can't really count out. I think a dude with that type of style is a guy that obviously you can't really prepare for because there's no one you can bring in to spar like Dominic Cruz. But I will also take Cheeto in this fight just based on their career trajectories and where they're at. It just feels like a fight. Like I'm kind of getting on board the Cheeto train. And if he's going to get to if he's going to take it to the next level, he's got to go out and beat a guy like Dominic Cruz. Because if you can't beat a Dominic Cruz level talent when he's 37, you damn sure ain't going to be able to beat nobody else in the top 5. So you got to go get this fight.
Yeah, Cheeto here, what he did to Rob Font was just ridiculous. Put it on, Rob. And he's looked a lot better since the Aldo fight. That was the last fight that Cheeto lost. And it's really just put it all together. He's got that little bit of dog in him. He changes his look every fight. I think he's just a young, good up-and-coming fighter. I mean, you mentioned the O'Malley fight, and we know how we're all kind of high on the Sugar Show. I'm lock it in. I'm all in on Cheeto Vera next Saturday main event, baby.
Okay, so I'll take Dominic Cruz.
So we're all three on the Cheeto train. Before we get out of here, you guys got any last final thoughts, comments, thoughts?
No, I mean, a good show. I don't know if we're going to miss you next week. So you can take that extended vacation. I think we'll be all right.
Hopefully the show will be all right next week because I'm gone. I'll be on vacation. But you can catch me tonight. We have the Fight Hard MMA lightweight champ Ray Sweet Baby Hayes is coming on. He'll be on the channel tonight. A little interview with him. It'll be happening about 7 p.m. Central Time Zone. We're going to talk about his past. He's got a fight next weekend. He's dropping down to featherweight, trying to take another title, trying to be double champ status here, Sweet Baby Ray Hayes. So we're going to get into all that. Join us in the YouTube comment section tonight at 7 p.m. Central. You can catch it right here on the Bodkins channel and the Let's Talk Sports channel. I also have the Bodkins and Buffoon. You can check us on Monday as well. Boys, it's been a great Saturday morning. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Kenny, go ahead and hit that outro, baby.
Thank you.